I am Isabella Cruz, born on March 14, 1991, in Bahia, Brazil, and I was trained in the dark system that targets believers' finances through marine altars. I am not here to tell you a story. I am here to confess what I personally did, what I enforced, and what I now regret with every breath in me. We were not sent to unbelievers. We were assigned to Christians to hijack their money, delay their blessings, and keep them struggling in cycles they could not explain. Listen carefully, this is not theory, this is exposure. Press like now, comment now, and share this video because what I'm about to reveal must spread before more lives are drained. Do not skip, do not scroll, you must watch until the very end, because what is hidden behind your financial struggle is deeper, darker, and more organized than you think. Something is about to be exposed, something they never wanted you to understand, and once you see it, your life will never remain the same. You think your financial struggles are random. You think it is bad luck. You think it is just life. I used to believe that too before I became part of the system that controls it. I am speaking of marine altars, not symbolic, not imaginary, real systems, structured hierarchies, assignments that are executed with precision. And the primary targets were Christians. We were trained to identify believers who had potential, not the weak ones, not the ones already broken, the dangerous ones, those who prayed, those who tithed, those who had covenant, because those were the ones carrying financial glory. And our mission was to intercept it. I remember the first time I was assigned. It was not dramatic, it was calculated. We were given names, faces, locations. People who woke up every morning and said, God will provide. We laughed because we knew something they didn't. Provision was being diverted. You need to understand this. There are spiritual gates connected to finances, and many believers unknowingly leave those gates open. That is where we entered. Not through force, through access. Access granted by ignorance, access granted by patterns, access granted by silence. We monitored habits, late payments, constant borrowing, sudden losses, opportunities collapsing at the last minute. These were not coincidences. These were indicators, signs that the person's financial flow had already been captured. And once it was captured, it was redirected. You would work hard, but the results would disappear. You would receive money, but it would leave faster than it came. Unexpected expenses, strange emergencies, endless cycles. That was us. We called it harvesting, not stealing. Harvesting, because from the spiritual realm, your money was already marked. And if it was not protected, it became accessible. I remember a woman, a strong believer. She prayed every night. She fasted. She gave. But she kept saying one thing: I don't understand why I'm always broke. We understood. Because her financial stream had been linked to a marine altar. Every time she received money, a portion was claimed, not physically, spiritually. And what you don't see controls what you experience. This is why many Christians feel stuck. You are not lazy. You are not cursed by chance. You are under spiritual interference. And I was part of the team that enforced it. We had ranks. And above us were entities that governed wealth exchanges. Yes, wealth is tracked. It moves through spiritual channels before it manifests physically. And if those channels are corrupted, the outcome is altered. That is why two people can work the same job and only one prospers. That is why you can do everything right and still feel blocked. Because effort alone does not break spiritual control. Authority does. And most believers have the authority, but they don't use it. Or worse, they don't know how. We were trained to exploit that ignorance. We feared only one thing: Scripture, not casual reading, not routine recitation, but targeted, intentional, weaponized prayer, especially the Psalms. There were specific Psalms we avoided, specific verses that disrupted our operations, because they did not just comfort, they commanded. And when spoken with understanding, they shut down access. But most Christians, they read without authority, they speak without awareness, they pray without precision, and that keeps the system running. I am telling you this because I enforced it. I saw accounts drained, opportunities delayed, contracts cancelled, not because of the physical world, but because decisions have already been made in the spiritual realm. Before you even showed up, you walked into outcomes that were already manipulated, and you blamed yourself. That is the trap. Self-blame, confusion, exhaustion. Because as long as you stay distracted, you never confront the real source. But now, you are hearing it. This is exposure, this is disruption. This is the moment where ignorance loses its power. Because once you see the system can no longer be controlled by it. But listen carefully. Exposure alone is not enough. You must act. You must engage. You must confront. Because the same way these systems operate with intention, you must respond with greater authority. And that begins with understanding the gateways, how access was given, how it is maintained, and how it is broken. Because yes, it can be broken. I have seen it happen. I have seen believers rise suddenly. Not because they worked harder, but because the spiritual hold was shattered. Everything changed overnight. Flow returned. Opportunities aligned. Favor activated. And we lost access. That is what this is about. Taking back access. Reclaiming what was diverted. Shutting down what was feeding off your life. But you must stay with me. Because what I am about to reveal next is how these marine systems legally establish control over your finances and why most Christians unknowingly cooperate with it. You are not attacked randomly. There is always a system, there is always a doorway, there is always a legal ground. That is what we were taught. Nothing happens until permission is established. And this is the part that will shake you. Most Christians unknowingly give that permission themselves. Not intentionally, not consciously, but consistently. I remember the training clearly. We were never told to force entry. We were instructed to wait for alignment. Alignment of behavior, alignment of words, alignment of patterns. Because once those three aligned, access became legal. Yes, legal in the spiritual realm, legality matters more than power. You can pray with emotion, but if access is still legal, the system remains intact. This is why some people pray for years and nothing changes. Not because God is silent, but because something else still has a claim. Let me show you how that claim is established. The first doorway is careless speech. You say things like, I can never get ahead, money never stays with me. I'm always struggling. You think it's frustration. But in the realm where I operated, those were declarations, authorizations. We recorded them. We enforced them. Because words create alignment. And once your words agree with limitation, we didn't have to fight you. You were already cooperating. The second doorway is financial disorder. Chaos attracts control. When your finances are scattered, when there is no discipline, no structure, no awareness, it creates vulnerability. We looked for that. People who didn't track their money, people who spent without thinking, people who lived in cycles. Because disorder creates gaps, and gaps become entry points. You call it bad management. We called it open access. The third doorway is broken covenants. This one is deep, very deep. There were believers who made promises to God, to people, even to themselves, and never fulfilled them. Unkept vows, unresolved commitments. These things create spiritual debt, and debt gives permission for interference. I remember one man, he had a business. Opportunities came, but nothing stayed. Every deal collapsed. Every investment failed. We were assigned to him, not because he was weak, but because he had opened the door years ago. He had made a vow in desperation. If God blesses me, I will give back. The blessing came, but the vow was forgotten. That was all the system needed. From that moment, his financial stream was tagged, not destroyed, just controlled. Because control is more effective than destruction. A controlled believer stays in the system longer. They keep working, keep trying, keep hoping, while the flow is being redirected. And they never realize why. The fourth doorway is spiritual neglect. This one gave us the most advantage. Christians who believe but do not engage. They attend, they listen, they agree, but they do not enforce. No consistent prayer, no authority in their words, no resistance in the spirit. That is not a threat, that is an opportunity. Because spiritual systems do not respond to belief alone, they respond to authority. And authority must be exercised, not occasionally, not emotionally, consistently. We monitored patterns. We knew who prayed once a week, who prayed only in crisis, who gave up quickly. Those were easy targets, because inconsistency weakens resistance. And once resistance is weak, control becomes stable. Now listen carefully. This is where the marine system becomes dangerous, because once access is established, it is maintained through cycles, repeated losses, repeated delays, until it becomes your normal, until you stop questioning it, until you accept it. That is the goal. Not to destroy you instantly, but to train you into limitation, to make struggle feel natural, to make lack feel permanent. So even when the opportunity for breakthrough comes, you don't recognize it, or worse, you sabotage it, because your mindset has already been conditioned. I saw this happen again and again. People would get close to breakthrough and something would happen, a mistake, a delay, a distraction. and everything would collapse, not by accident, by design. Because once a system has legal ground, it will defend it. But here is the truth they never wanted you to hear. Legal ground can be revoked, access can be denied, control can be broken, but not by ignorance, not by passive faith, only by intentional, targeted spiritual action. This is why the Psalms were dangerous to us. Not all of them, specific ones, because they addressed legality, they confronted access, they issued commands. And when spoken with understanding, they didn't just comfort the believer, they disrupted the system. I remember nights when assignments were cancelled, not because we chose to stop, but because we were forced to, because someone somewhere spoke with authority, not emotion. Authority, and everything changed. That is what you are about to learn. Not general prayer, not routine words, but targeted spiritual weapons. 5 Psalms, specific, intentional. Strategic Psalms that break legal access. Psalms that shut down marine altars. Psalms that restore financial flow. But you must stay focused, because the next part is where I reveal exactly how these Psalms were used against us and why we feared them more than anything. This is where everything changed for me. Not when I entered the system, but when I saw it fail. Because until that moment, I believed the control was absolute. I believed once access was established, it could not be broken. I was wrong. There were nights when assignments collapsed. Not gradually, not partially, completely. We would be in operation, monitoring a target, waiting for the usual pattern, and suddenly disruption. No warning, no negotiation, no delay, just termination. We were forced to withdraw, and the cause was always the same. Someone had engaged the Psalms correctly, not casually, not religiously, but as a weapon. You need to understand this. The Psalms are not just comfort, they are legal documents in the spirit. They speak directly to systems, they confront authority, they issue commands, and when activated with understanding, they override illegal control. I will show you exactly what we encountered. The first psalm that disrupted our operations was Psalm 23. You have heard it before. You have probably memorized it, but you were never told how it functions. The Lord is my shepherd. That is not poetry. That is alignment. When someone declared that with authority, it shifted ownership. Because the moment God is established as shepherd, every other controlling system loses claim. We could not override that because it redefined the source. Provision was no longer external. It became covenant-based, and covenant is protected. The second one was Psalm 24. This one was dangerous because it addressed ownership of the earth and everything in it. When a believer declared that, it cancelled unauthorized claims, including ours. We depended on silence. We depended on ignorance. But when someone spoke ownership back to God, our access became illegal, and illegal access cannot be sustained. The third psalm, this one caused the most resistance, Psalm 35. This was not a prayer, this was warfare, direct confrontation. Fight against those who fight against me. When this was spoken with authority, it activated defense, not passive protection. Active resistance, we felt it. Pressure, interference, reversal, assignments began to backfire. Because now the believer was not just a target, they became a threat. And the system does not engage threats casually, it withdraws. The fourth Psalm, Psalm 91, this one we avoided completely because Psalm 91 established coverage, not temporary, not partial, total. He who dwells in the secret place, that is positioning, not location. When someone truly entered that position, they became untouchable. Not because we didn't try, but because access was denied at every level. It was like hitting a wall we could not see, but could not pass. And finally, the fifth Psalm, Psalm 121. This one closed the cycle because it established continuous watch. God neither sleeps nor slumbers. That meant there was no gap, no moment of weakness, no opportunity. And that is what we needed the most, opportunity. But when that psalm was activated, there was no entry point left. None. Now listen carefully. It was not the words alone that stopped us. It was the understanding behind them. Many people read Psalms, but nothing happens. Why? Because they read them as comfort, not as command. They whisper them. Instead of declaring them, they repeat them without engaging them, and the system remains unaffected. But when someone understood, when they spoke with authority, when they aligned their belief with their words, everything changed. I remember one specific case. A man we had monitored for years. Consistent losses, repeated failure, no progress, easy target. Until one night, something shifted. He began to pray differently, not longer, not louder, different, focused, intentional. He started declaring these psalms, not reading, declaring. Within weeks, everything changed. Opportunities opened, money stabilized, losses stopped. We were cut off completely. No access, no influence, no control. That was the moment I began to question everything, because I realized the power we operated with was not greater than the authority believers carried. It only worked because they did not use it. Let that sink in. You are not powerless. You are unactivated. And that is what this is about. Activation, not information, not awareness. Activation, because now you know the Psalms. But knowing is not enough. You must engage them. You must speak them. You must enforce them daily, consistently, with authority. Because the system you are dealing with is consistent. It does not rest. It does not forget. It does not stop unless it is forced to. And that is what these Psalms do. They force a shutdown. They revoke access. They restore control back to you. But there is one final thing, one final step that determines whether this breakthrough becomes permanent or temporary. Because I have seen people break free and then fall back again. Not because the system was stronger, but because they did not maintain what they received. And that is what I will reveal next. Breaking the system is one thing, staying free is another. This is where many believers fail. They experience a moment of breakthrough, a sudden shift, a season where things begin to align, and then slowly everything slips back. Not instantly, not obviously, but gradually, until they find themselves in the same cycle again. I saw this happen too many times. People would rise and then return, not because the system regained power, but because the person stopped enforcing authority. Freedom in the spirit must be maintained, not assumed. You cannot win a battle and abandon the territory, because the moment you do, re-entry begins. This is how the marine system survives, not by overpowering you, but by waiting you out, waiting for fatigue, waiting for distraction, waiting for neglect. And once consistency breaks, access begins to reopen, and then everything collapsed again. It is not coincidence, it is re-entry. And re-entry only happens when the door is reopened. Now listen carefully. There are four things that must be established permanently, not temporarily, not emotionally. Permanently, the first is daily spiritual enforcement, not occasional prayer, not emergency prayer, daily. You must speak with authority every day, not because you feel like it, but because the system you are confronting operates daily. Consistency defeats resistance. When you declare those psalms, you are not repeating words, you are maintaining territory. You are reinforcing boundaries. You are reminding every opposing system that access is denied. The second is discipline in your physical life. This is where many ignore the connection, but it is real. Spiritual authority and physical discipline work together. When your finances are ordered, when your decisions are intentional, when your habits are controlled, you remove entry points. Remember what I told you. Disorder creates gaps, and gaps become access. But when there is structure, there is no space for manipulation. No hidden entry, no silent influence. Everything becomes aligned, and alignment is protection. The third is guarding your words. This is critical because what you say still matters. You cannot declare authority in prayer and then cancel it with your speech. It does not work. I saw people do this. They would pray powerfully and then speak defeat all day, and the system would hold on to the defeat. Because consistency creates authority, not moments. So you must watch your words. No more, I'm always broke, that nothing works for me, that I can't get ahead. Those are not harmless statements. They are permissions. And you are not giving permission anymore. From this moment, your words must align with authority, even when you don't see results yet, because what you say shapes what is allowed. The fourth and final thing is spiritual awareness. You must stay alert. You must recognize patterns. You must question cycles, because the system does not always return the same way. Sometimes it is subtle, small delays, minor setbacks, unexpected distractions, testing the boundaries, looking for weakness, looking for a gap, and if you are not aware, you will ignore it until it grows again. But when you are alert, you shut it down immediately, before it expands, before it stabilizes, before it becomes a cycle again. This is how you stay free. Not by chance, not by luck, by strategy, by consistency, by authority. I am telling you this because I enforced the opposite. I relied on inconsistency. I depended on ignorance. I waited for distraction. And it worked again and again until someone refused to cooperate, until someone stayed consistent, until someone understood their authority and refused to let go of it. Those were the people we could not touch, not occasionally, at all. And that is who you are becoming. Not a victim of cycles, not a target of systems, but a controller of your spiritual environment, where nothing operates without your permission, where nothing enters without your awareness, where nothing stays without your approval. This is your position. This is your authority. This is your moment. But it must be activated, not tomorrow, not later, now. Because delay is another tool of the system, and the longer you wait, the longer it operates. But the moment you act, everything begins to shift immediately, not gradually, immediately. Because authority does not grow slowly, it activates instantly. And once it is activated, nothing remains the same. This is your confirmation. Your breakthrough has already been set in motion, and what once controlled your finances no longer has permission to remain. Do not stay silent, comment now. Declare your freedom and make it known that every chain has been broken. Share this message immediately, because someone close to you is still trapped in a system they cannot see. You were not meant to struggle. You were not designed to live in cycles. You were chosen to walk in authority and overflow. You watched this until the very end for a reason. This was not chance. This was alignment. And now you are activated. From this moment forward, nothing drains you, nothing delays you, and nothing controls what God has already released over your life. Stand firm, speak with authority, and never go back.